Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk about the brilliance that is the Alabasta arc, the second major arc in One Piece. And this covers basically everything from when they enter the Grand Line in chapter 100 to when they leave Alabasta in the most heartbreaking way imaginable. And, Alabasta is a really incredible arc for a lot of reasons. It introduced us to the best character who almost was a Straw Hat and definitely should have been a Straw Hat, but somehow wasn't. Princess Vivi Nefertari, aka Miss Wednesday, aka Goddammit, Oda, why do you hurt us like this? What is wrong with you? You must get off on making us cry, you bastard. Um, This is also the part of the story where we first meet Ace, one of the most important tragic characters of the entire series, although, quite frankly, he should have been introduced sooner, and I think if Oda realized how long his series was going to run, he probably would have introduced Ace a little sooner and given him a little more to do in the story, but whatever. But more importantly than any of that, we get Chopper, the cutest little mascot that ever was. An adorable little blue-nosed reindeer that ate the human fruit and therefore can turn into monsters. Science. Also, I want to point out that in the original Japanese version, there's a constant running joke of everyone mistaking him for a tanuki because it kind of looks like one. But the problem is that the word tanuki doesn't really have a translation in English, and so when you read or watch the English version, they say raccoon dog, which is like technically correct but doesn't have the same connotation at all, and there's no such thing as a raccoon dog. That's just a weird way that we refer to Japanese raccoons to differentiate them from American raccoons because they're very different creatures. But yeah, the joke doesn't really land in English, but it's nice. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you read or watch the English version, then whenever they say raccoon dog, mentally replace it with the word tanuki because that actually has the correct cultural context. And for anyone who somehow doesn't know what a tanuki is, basically it's a magical creature in Japanese folklore that can shapeshift by putting a leaf on its head and shit. And apparently they have giant testicles. I don't know why that's important, but it is. And they're kind of analogous to Japanese raccoons, the same way a kitsune is kind of analogous to a fox. But none of that is really very important because Chopper isn't a tanuki, he's a reindeer. And a doctor. And I guess technically a human because he ate that fruit. And also sometimes a giant fluffy rage monster. Yeah, whatever. But most of all, an adorable little cotton candy loving puffball that everyone can look at and be like, oh, he's so cute. Great mascot. 10 out of 10. So the main crux of this arc is they've just entered the Grand Line. They meet Vivi. Vivi explains to them, hey, these mercenary people are trying to take over my country with a civil war that they incited, and they're being led by a warlord who, is really powerful. Like, the last time you guys met a warlord, Zoro was crippled. So, help, please? And then they fight the mercenaries and beat up the warlord and save the country. Easy peasy. No one even dies, somehow. This is where we really start to see one of the biggest problems with One Piece, the fake out deaths. It's really weird the way Oda will sometimes write very good death scenes for characters, and then a few chapters later he'll just be like, no, that character's still alive, whatever. And it's weird because it's not like people never die in One Piece. People die all the time. It's just that there's this weird tendency to sometimes make the characters not actually die because reasons. Probably the most egregious example of this is the first real example that most people remember, Pell. Pell is an unimportant side character in the grand scheme of things. He's like a servant of the Nefertari family, and he can turn into a hawk and shit. And so that's cool and all. But the thing is that he's supposed to die here, right? Like, he has this big dramatic moment. The other guardian spirit person that he works with already had their big dramatic death scene, which also gets reversed, but whatever. And he's carrying a fucking giant bomb into the air so that it doesn't kill everyone. And he flies up with it, and he gets all the way up there, and the bomb clearly explodes, and you can see the explosion encompassing his face, and he's already wounded at this point in the story. And, you know, he has these big dramatic last words, and everyone cries for him, and then, you know. And then at the end of the arc, they just have a random panel of him walking up to some guy in the desert and being like, hey, can I get some water? Like, what the fuck? Why? Why, Oda? This character isn't important. He never comes back. He never gets any screen time after this. You could have just left out that panel. It would have been fine. This is also the part of the story where we get introduced to one of the other big problems with One Piece. Its issue with trans characters through the lens of Bon Clay. And I had a whole video about this, but, you know, in this particular part of the story, nothing too egregious happens. I mean, really, all that happens, as far as Bon Clay is concerned, is they're kind of presented as a joke, but there's no, like, setup for the joke. They're just, like, on screen, and I think Oda expects you to laugh, but I'm not sure why. And then they have this weird speech about not being a man or a woman once or twice. Now, you could interpret this as Oda being kind of self-aware and casting this character as non-binary, but considering when this came out and how much other really not okay stuff Oda does with trans characters after this, I think it comes more from a place of Oda not understanding what trans people are. Now, to be clear, I don't think Oda's mishandling of trans characters is necessarily coming from a place of malice so much as ignorance, and that's why I'm kind of hopeful that after so many years of people telling him things about how he's handling this, that Yamato will be different. Because so far it seems like Yamato has been presented in a very different way than other trans characters in the story, and so like I'm hoping that works out, but whatever. I had a whole video about that. Bon Clay is probably the second character people think of as probably should have joined the Straw Hats but didn't, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Like, on the one hand, yes, Bon Clay is a great character and he does so much for the Straw Hat crew over the years, but on the other hand, the anime went out of their way to give him the most annoying voice possible, and every second he's on screen makes me want to tear my ears off, and can't say I miss it. Of course, I mostly read the manga these days, but still, like, yikes. It's crazy how much a bad casting choice can kind of ruin a character like that. Not that giving him an annoying voice is untrue to the character. I think he probably should have an annoying voice based on the way the character speaks and stuff, but it makes it a lot harder to enjoy the character in the anime. But beyond those couple of issues and the fact that Vivi didn't join the crew, I think Alabasta is a really good arc. There's a lot of excellent action. There's a lot of really dramatic, tear-jerking moments, especially on Drum Island. Oh my god. There's a lot of kind of crazy character development in terms of characters' abilities, especially with Zoro and Sanji getting so much more powerful. Nami gets her climb attacked. You know, like, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff going on, and it's great. There's also, of course, some very heart-wrenching scenes with Vivi and her attachment to this conflict and her country and the people, and there's a lot of dramatic irony going on. Like, we know what's going on with the war and how it's being staged and stuff, and people are trying to explain that, but no one will listen because they've seen with their own eyes the tricks that the bad guys are using to trick them. And so there's a lot of genuine, like, despair on behalf of Vivi for like what's happening. And actually, let me just circle back to Pell. One of the bigger issues with Pell not dying is the fact that they spent so much time on Vivi like wanting to stop the war before it starts and make sure that no one dies, right? But they also spent so much time on other characters, Luffy, Crocodile, everyone, telling her, someone's going to die. This is a war. You can't make it so that no one dies. You can mitigate things. You can end it quickly, but someone will die. And the fact that in the end, none of the important characters actually die is even more frustrating because they spent so much time on that point, but whatever. This is also where we really get introduced to one of the major issues with Luffy's fights. I don't know if I'd call it an issue so much as like a technique that has probably become overused at this point, where basically Luffy will face off against one of, if not the biggest bad guy of the arc and lose, and then come back later more prepared and win. Now this kind of sort of happens against Arlong. He's opening up a can of whoop ass on Arlong, and then he does something stupid and gets himself stuck underwater so that everyone else can have their fights. And then he gets out of it, his stupid situation, and then he continues opening that can of whoop ass on Arlong. But, you know, nothing really changes. He doesn't like develop a new strategy or anything. He just continues to dominate the fight. However, starting with Crocodile and really going on from there, Luffy has a long streak of losing his first encounter with the big bad and then getting more powerful and then coming back and beating him. When he first fought Crocodile, he had no chance, right? Because Crocodile has this special kind of devil fruit called Logia that basically means he's made of sand. And nothing can touch him because his body just turns to sand when someone tries to touch him. And he's not even the first character to be introduced with this kind of power. We've already met Smoker, who is made of smoke, and Ace, who is made of fire. So really, Crocodile isn't that special. Honestly, his ability is probably weaker than either of theirs. But his ability has a weakness, right? Sand gets clumpy when you get it wet. So if you get him wet, his body clumps together and you can hit him. Luffy figured this out after the first fight when his blood got onto this guy and made him solid. So then in the second fight, he shows up with this barrel of water and a hose strapped to his back, which I'm not sure where he got that, but okay. Maybe Nico Robin gave it to him? I'm unclear. And now he can get Crocodile wet and continue the fight. Although that solution only kind of works. Eventually Crocodile escapes the battle. Luffy, chases after him and has to resort to using his blood to weaken Crocodile's defenses again. And of course, narratively and symbolically, this is amazing, right? Like, Alabasta is a desert kingdom. Their main struggle has been water. One of the defining traits of this story arc has been like how water is used, who has it, things like that. And so beating the bad guy with water to save the desert kingdom is kind of great. But it does kind of show off a recurring feature of the story that keeps happening. It happens in the next arc, in the next arc, in the next arc. Every time there's a big villain that we need to show off how powerful they are and how cool they are, they come in, they beat Luffy, they leave, Luffy gears up to fight them, and then he wins. And on the one hand, it can sometimes feel very out of nowhere. If he could have won the whole time, why didn't he win the first time? But sometimes it works better than others. I think the current arc is doing it pretty well. He had a confrontation with the big bad Kaido and didn't go well for him at all. But then he got thrown in jail and trained, and he's been training for a while and learned some new techniques and stuff, and now he came up and fought Kaido and he failed a second time, so they can drag out the climax. And I mean, yikes. But also, I think that when he does finally get back up to facing Kaido again, it will be really, really cool. So I just wanted to point out that this is kind of where that trend started, and I think it's probably done better here than it is in most other arcs, because at least here there's like a mechanical reason why Luffy couldn't win the first time and could win the second time, So yeah, overall, Alabasta is a really cool arc that left a really big impact on the story, introduced some really important characters, had some really great emotional moments, and there are some problems. Some of the legacy this arc left on the story isn't great, but it's something. Also, one other thing that I remember from Alabasta that apparently no one else does is they have a second poneglyph. And I don't know if that's going to become relevant or not, but Luffy and Zoro and Chopper get stuck down this hole, and there's a poneglyph there, and they don't know what it is yet. And then they leave and never come back. And presumably Robin has not seen that poneglyph and doesn't know what's written on it. And who knows if that's relevant or not. Oh well. Well, anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this arc and this video about the arc, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, thanks for watching that video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stupid YouTube crap. Also, you can find me on Twitch at the Golden Stalfos, obviously. On Wednesdays, me and my girlfriend stream playthroughs of games she's never played before, and that's a lot of fun. And on other days, I will sometimes randomly do a challenge run or something if I'm feeling like it. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter to make extra sure you get video notifications. And I have a Patreon if and only if you have money to burn. But to be fair, if you have money to burn, you should also consider some charities. There are always a few linked in my description, just in case. Oh, and be sure to leave positive comments down below for my girlfriend who volunteered to edit my videos for free because she's awesome. And yeah, thanks for watching.